Okay, so I've got my tentacle piece here all like kind of cut out and it's kind of crazy. Um, but we're gonna take a look at what I have here in fabrics and figure out what I can manage to actually make. So I think when I did this, if I drew correctly, this is roughly just under 45 inches from top to bottom if I run it this way. Um, and width-wise, at the widest part, it's about 26 inches. So I might have to kind of tweak and play here, but I'm going to kind of audition some fabric and figure out which fabric I have enough of. I have a little bit left from the first one I made. I picked up 2 new pieces that I really like and have a lot of movement, but I know neither one of them has enough to do all of it. So I might kind of mix these 4 different fabrics together to actually get the end result. Mind you, this one is my favorite one. It's purple and swirly and it's got lots of little bubbles. And while Ursula is, you know, solid colored, this could be a lot of fun, but my concern is I would have to get 6 tentacles. About this much space widthwise. And I just don't think I can quite do that unless I piece the bottoms and the top part of them kind of separately. And I don't think that's what I want to do. But do I have enough to get 4 this way? Still not quite. So this one's going to be off the table as much as I love it. I'll find something else to do with it. This one I had a little more of, but I still don't have a lot. So you know what? Let's take my skirt here and let's just trim it up and let's see if I can't get it down to being a little smaller. Yeah, we're getting there. So this kind of really wide shape up in here is actually going to be kind of, you know, the bell of the actual costume. And then the rest of it will just kind of come down. And mind you, I left a little bit of my seam allowance over here that I probably should have cut off. So let's go ahead and take that off now so we aren't debating where it is. When we cut this out, we'll evenly add the seam allowance back in on the 2 sides, because while the original quarter skirt pattern piece was designed to be laid on like a piece of fabric that you literally folded in quarters and it didn't have any seams to it, we're going to have to add in our own seam allowances here when we actually cut this to have this work out to be the right size. I'm at that roughly, you know, 44-ish mark. And the widest point from clear over here to the back of my tentacle is still, you know, 23, 24. So across 6 of these, 24 is 2/3 of a yard. So I'm going to need a little more fabric than I necessarily planned on, but that's okay. We're going to make it work. I think I've got enough sitting here that I can do it without having to MacGyver, but she might have 2 pairs of different colored, or 3 pairs of all different colored tentacles, which quite frankly I'm okay with. That's kind of the fun in this. I get to make it up as I go. So if I do this, can I get 2 tentacles out of this? Answer says yes. So we're going to make 2 out of this. We can definitely get 2 from this one. Oh, and I think the last 2 we're going to make something that's a little different yet. And then, of course, when we go to sew them together, we'll play with where we put them and how they work and that kind of, you know, an idea to really have fun with the color movement. Of course, you know, you've probably bought enough fabric to do it all in one. But I just like to kind of have fun and mix and match my fabrics. That's one of my favorite parts in creating, is simply choosing the fabric. So yeah, that's gonna work for me to get 2 out of purple ombre that I bought, that I did my original ones from. I put the light at the bottom, but judging with my colors that I have today, I am actually going to put the dark at the bottom, because when you look at Ursula, she's actually darker underneath than she is on the top. So that's how I'm going to get this done and put together. And how I'm going to get these all traced out is going to be really super scientific. And by really super scientific, I mean not at all scientific. I'm actually going to take my fabric, and I apologize if some of you out there cringe at what I am about to do, but I am actually just going to snip in the middle here where this folds over. Snip through my selvage on my top layer. I'm just going to rip it. This is not my favorite way to use fabric, but it should tear along the grain line, and I should have a nice clean break the whole way across, get to my other selvage. I'm just going to clip again. Doesn't rip through the selvage very well since it's that tightly woven edge. And there we go. So, if I have this thought out correctly and laid out to start with, I should be able to cover my entire pattern piece with this one piece of fabric that I just did, and I am definitely going to get it covered. It's going to be close, but that's all right. So I'm actually going to layer up all 6 layers of this, and then we're going to come back and we're going to cut them all out as one to save ourselves a bunch of time, repositioning, etc. And the first cut that I'm going to make on this is actually going to be really kind of down and dirty, because how I intend to get all my extra volume on the tentacles is I'm going to actually long arm it. So if you're not familiar with a long arm, it's actually a really big sewing machine. In the case of the one that I'm going to use, it's on rails, so you actually move the sewing head itself as opposed to moving the fabric through like we do in our traditional home sewing machines. Like I said, super scientific method. How long does it need to be? Well, as long or as wide as the other piece of fabric was. So I've kind of laid out my tentacle here, and I'm really looking at this and I'm going, this probably has way too much volume here and through this section. So I'm seriously just going to chop off a little bit more of it. So while that was, only an inch or so wide, that equates to 6 inches of volume the whole way around the skirt. So not a big deal, not a lot that I'm going to have lost there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my Sew Super shears here, my big purple scissors from So Much Cosplay, and I'm going to roughly cut out all 6 layers of fabric here. Yes, I said all 6, and believe me, it just goes through here like butter. Remember how I said we didn't have the seam allowance in there? So I'm going to cut about an inch outside of this. And when I get down to the tentacle part there, I'm not going to worry about getting directly in there. I am just going to kind of go around it in a block. And then I'm going to take some chalk, yes, some actual sidewalk chalk, and trace these outlines on all of these layers. So there we go. I've got those all cut out now. So I was hoping for some clear cellophane tape. I'm not sure where it's hiding in the studio today. So we're just going to use a little piece of pink embroidery perfection tape from R&K. A super sticky pink tape works great to hold things down in the hoop while you're doing different things, etc. And in our case today, it's going to hold our pattern tissue together. So I have just a piece of sidewalk chalk here, and I'm actually just going to brush it over the edges of my pattern piece. So that way when I pull back this pattern piece, you can see where the outline of this actually is. So there we go, there's the rough outline of our first one. So I'm going to do all 6 of these and then we'll continue on. Alright, so let's cut all that great Power Shine glitter to actually go on the bottom of our tentacles. I already took off the plastic wrap around this. I'm just going to pull off the little instruction sheet so we can actually get to the product that's hiding in here. Of course, you might want to make note of the directions if this is the first time you're using this product before you kind of obliterate them as I'm doing here. I've used this several times before, so I'm not super duper worried about it. The Power Shine Glitter in Foil, we have 2 colors of foil currently and 5 colors of glitter. It's heat transfer vinyl, so it works great if you want to do t-shirt emblems, or in this case, just to give a little bit of extra pop and pizzazz to my project. So once I manage to make it through all the protective layers of tape that keep it rolled pretty on the roll and gorgeous in the store when you go to buy it, we'll get this on our mat. So I've got my Cricut Maker already set up and ready to go. Looks like the Maker is finished cutting here, so we're just going to unload the cutting mat. I'm going to just close it and slide it out of the way briefly here. And hopefully, there we go. So this is what I wanted this to do. I want to pull off all this extra glitter from around the edges. I'm going to toss it aside, save it for another project. I've got an interesting idea to use up some of these scraps because they're just too fun to throw away. And now I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to peel off these concentric circles. So of course, traditionally you would want to just, peel off the parts that you don't need. In the case of what we're doing, since we made our circles concentric and they're inside of each other and we're using the positive and the negative space, it gets us a bunch of different sized ovals that we can use to really give those tentacles some additional depth. So there we go. We've got 5 different sizes of the actual oval, plus we've got a little center dot that I'm going to cut the center out of and use anyway, so I'm only left with that teeny tiny little bit of waste there. Alright, so that superstructure foam that we showed in the big package before, this is what it actually looks like out and on the table. It's just a big sheet of black single-sided fusible foam. It's got a tricot coating on it, so it's not what they call naked. It does have fabric on the outside, and the one side of it's fusible. You probably can't see it super well on the camera, but I have the fusible side up. I'm using a scrap left from my last project to show you how to do this, but of course I'm going to touch as many of these as possible onto my larger pieces to save it. I've got a pressing surface underneath and I've already preheated my iron here, and I am literally just going to press and pick up and move and just repeat this process across the entire piece to adhere down the underside of that tentacle that we cut earlier. Because this is where it kind of starts to get important, where we think about where we're going to position all these little guys, etc. I'm not worried about the lower tail because the lower tail I'm going to totally cover. But this upper stuff up here, from like here and above, it's all going to be in the skirt that's tucked up underneath the costume. So I'm not going to waste my pretty foil on it. I'm going to start kind of below this line here. And I'm going to start with my largest pieces first. And I'm just going to kind of lift this up and slide them underneath so I figure out about where that edge is. All the way across. And once I've kind of established where that edge is, I don't know how well you can see it on camera there, but I've got it underneath there. I want to kind of keep them all inside because I don't want them to fall into my seam allowance. I'm just going to go ahead and take that pattern off. I'm going to shift these around a little, and I'm just going to go back and I'm going to fill in with the rest of these that I've cut. Now you'll notice some of these I might turn upside down or, you know, kind of topsy-turvy them a little. I learned the first time I made this costume that our Power Shine glitter has a right and a wrong side, or rather it has a grain to it, kind of like lots of the different fabrics that we use all the time. You know, there's a grain. When you pet velvet, it feels nicer one way versus the other. Those fun reversible sequins are the same way. Well, our glitter is no different. And the whole goal of this is you're just going to work with these and you're going to get them to where you like them, and then we're going to fuse them down. Alright, so I've got all of these kind of laid out on here. I've adjusted the pressing surface underneath. So I'm going to take my iron and I'm going to begin to fuse these down. In the end, I used 7 of the largest 2 sizes, 6 of the next 2, or 8 of the next 2, and all 9 of the smallest 2 sizes. So I've got these all, so the really nice shiny side is up, so I'm seriously just going to press. Count to about 10 I find works pretty well with the temperature that my iron's set at. And I'm going to pick up and I'm going to go on to the next set of them. I'm going to do this the whole way around this tentacle. So any of those sections that maybe I didn't iron down super well on the fabric the first time, we're going to have adhered well this time with the pressing to get these little suckers on. Now it's important to note the bottom of my iron has holes in it, which means every place that there's one of those little holes, these little suckers aren't going to adhere because they're not going to get heat. So once I get everything on initially, I will go back and give them a second, you know, probably slightly quicker press, just to make sure that I have everything adhered really well and we don't accidentally have any of these that fall off. Now it's really important that you realize you're going to want to pick off that pretty shiny carrier sheet first thing. You have to wait for this to be cool to the touch, otherwise you risk pulling up the vinyl along with it. Let's see if I can get this first one here that we did to come off. Oh, my vinyl started to come with it. It's still a tiny bit warm. No fear, that happens. You can just gently press it down again, heat it up, and it'll stick. I'm going to go ahead and get the other 5 of these done, and then we're going to long arm.